Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, today we are starting new chapter, chapter 29, talks between Narad Muni and King Prachin Barhi. So this is the last chapter of this talks between Narad Muni and King Prachin Barhishat. And let's continue. Text 1. Prachin Barhir Uvacha Bhagwanste Vacho Asma Bhirna Samyag Vagamyate Kavyastad Vijananti Navayam Karma Mohita. King Prachin Barhi replied, My dear Lord, we could not appreciate completely the purport of your allegorical story of King Puranjan. Actually, those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge can understand, but for us who are overly attached to fruitive activities, to realize the purpose of your story is very difficult. So King Prachin Barhi said, you spoke so many things, all allegorical things. I didn't really understand. And he's saying, and he's admitting that we are attached to fruitive activities, not spiritually advanced, so cannot understand. Of course, we understood because Prabhupada explained everything in the purports. And this talk between King Prachin Barhi and Narad Muni must have lasted, what, half an hour or so, maybe less than that. All the shlokas when he spoke. So he didn't really understand. Of course, it took us long time because Prabhupada's purports, but the conversation must have happened just for half an hour or so. Well, anyway, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, deluded by the three modes, ignorance, passion, and goodness, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Generally, people are enchanted by the three modes of material nature and therefore practically unable to understand that behind all materialistic activities in the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Generally, when people are engaged in sinful or pious activities, they are not perfect in knowledge of devotional service. The allegorical story narrated by Narad Muni to King Barhishma is especially meant to engage conditioned souls in devotional service. The entire story, narrated allegorically, is easily understood by a person in devotional service. But those who are engaged not in devotional service but in sense gratification cannot perfectly understand it. This is admitted by King Barhishman. This 29th chapter describes that by too much attachment for women, one becomes a woman in the next life. But a person who associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative becomes free from all material attachments and is thus liberated. So it was his fortune that Narad Muni himself came and he spoke to him this knowledge in an allegorical form. As I said earlier, that Narad Muni also sees what's the level of the devotee he is speaking to, what's the level of the soul he is speaking to, and he gave the message accordingly. Now, by the association of Narad Muni, King Prachin Barhishat got purified. So he wants to know what exactly he meant, Narad Muni meant. Naraduvacha Purusham Puranjanam Vidyadyad Vyanaktayatmanaha Puram Ekad Vichitra Chatushpadam Bahupadam Apadakam. The great sage Narad Muni continued, you must understand that Puranjan, the living entity, transmigrates according to his own work into different types of bodies, which may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or simply legless. Transmigrating into various types of bodies, a living entity as the so-called enjoyer is known as Puranjan. So according to our desires, we can go into different kinds of bodies. Okay, now the question is, in translation it says, one-legged. How the spirit soul transmigrates from one type of body to another is nicely described here. Now, what is a one-legged? Two-legged we know, three-legged we can find out, four, many-legged, or simply legless. So legless will be the snakes, though don't have legs. Two-legged human beings, four-legged animals, many-legged, there's so many insects like centipede is there, he has 100 legs. But what is one-legged? Prabhupada explains it. The word ekpad, one-legged, refers to ghosts, for it is said that the ghosts walk on one leg. So they have only one leg. So if we are in an area in the dark and forest or maybe some house which is haunted house, and if somebody comes to us trying to scare us with two legs, scare us that he is ghost. Now we know ghosts have only one leg. So if he has two legs, he's not a ghost. He's just doing prank. Anyway, I'm pretty sure before we figure it out, we'll run away from there. But that's okay. But at least we know now the ghosts have only one leg. The word dvipad means biped, refers to human beings. Now, what is tripad? Three-legged. When he is old and invalid, the human being is supposed to be a triped or three-legged because he walks with the help of a stick or some kind of cane. So that's when he's called three-legged or tripod, like we use the tripod for cameras. Of course, the word chatushpad refers to quadrupeds or animals. The word bahupad refers to those creatures who have more than four legs. There are many insects such as centipede, also many aquatic animals that have many legs, like octopus. The word apadak, meaning without legs, refers to serpents. The name Puranjan indicates one who enjoys possessing different types of bodies. His mentality for enjoyment in the material world is accommodated by different types of bodies. So Narad Muni now is coming to the real import of the allegorical story. So Puranjan means any soul who wants to enjoy in this body, and the body could be made of any legs. Yo avigyata hritastasya purushasya sakheshwaraha yanna vigyayate pumbhir nama bhirva kriya gunahe. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. So, avigyat, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Paramatma sitting inside the heart of everybody. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the conditioned souls, he is sometimes described in Vedic literatures as Nirakar, Avigyat, or Avan Manas Gochara. Actually, it is a fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be perceived by material senses as far as his form, name, quality, pastimes, or paraphernalia are concerned. However, when one is spiritually advanced, one can understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya mam avijanati yavanyascha asmita. One can understand in truth the Supreme Personality of Godhead only when one is engaged in devotion service. Ordinary persons engaged in pious and impious activities cannot understand the form, name, and activities of the Lord. The devotee, however, can know the personality of Godhead in many respects. He can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that his address is Golok Vrindavan, and that his activities are all spiritual. Because the Lord's form and activities cannot be understood by materialistic people, he is described by the Shastras as Nirakar, that is, one whose form cannot be ascertained by a materialistic person, because his form is spiritual. So Nirakar also means one who doesn't have a material form, one who has a spiritual form. But those who don't have a vision, I mean, look at the painting behind me, beautiful painting of Krishna enjoying with his cows and playing on his flute. People will say, oh, this is just a painting. But painting is based on some description in the scriptures. And the scriptures come from Krishna himself. And the scriptures are not understood or interpreted in any way by any of the conditioned souls. It has to be deciphered by the acharyas. So the spiritual world, it's all there in the scriptures. Well, we cannot understand because we don't have those eyes to see. We don't have that kind of brain power to understand. We don't have that heart to realize all these activities and all these forms. That's why we say, oh, it's all Nirakar. Ultimate is Nirakar. How can we perceive God as Nirakar? And when all the forms and shapes are coming from him, and how can the original be without any form? It doesn't make sense. So because we cannot understand, we think it is Nirakar. But no, those who have understood, those who have seen, those who have heard him, we should approach them and they will explain the truth. He is described by the Shastras as Nirakar, that as the form that cannot be ascertained by materialistic person. This does not mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no form. It means that it is not understood by the karmis or fruitive actors. His form is described in Brahma Samhita as Satchidananda Vigraha, as confirmed by Padma Puran. No one can understand Krishna as he is by utilizing the blunt material senses. However, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees, being pleased with them because of their transcendental loving service rendered unto him. Since the name, form, qualities, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the material senses, he is also called Adhokshaja, meaning beyond sense perception. When the senses are purified by devotional activity, the devotee understands everything about the Lord by the Lord's grace. In this verse, the word Pumbhir, Nanabhir, Va Kriya, Gune are especially significant because God, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has many names, activities, and qualities, although none of them are material. Despite the fact that all these names, activities, and pastimes are mentioned in the Shastras and understood by the devotees, the karmis, fruitive laborers, cannot understand them. Nor can the jnanis, mental speculators, understand them. Although there are thousands of names of Lord Vishnu, the karmis and jnanis intermingle the names of Supreme Godhead with the names of demigods and human beings, because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They take for granted that any name can be accepted. They believe that since the absolute truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. This is not a fact. Here it is clearly stated, Namabhir Va Kriya Guna. The Lord has specific names as Ram, Krishna, Govinda, Narayan, Vishnu, and Adhokshaja. There are indeed many names, but the conditioned soul cannot understand them. He has Ananta name, Hari, Ananta Hari, Katha Ananta. He is Ananta, unlimited names he has. But we cannot understand. A conditioned soul cannot understand. And since he has so many names, Vishnu Sahasranam is one, but Yes, he can have thousands and thousands of names. So people say one person cannot have so many names. He must be in person. This is the foolish logic. Yada jigrakshan purusha karsnen prakritir gunam navadvaram dvihastangri tatramanut sadviti. When the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality, he prefers, out of many bodily forms, to accept that body which has 9 gates, 2 hands, and 2 legs. Thus, he prefers to become a human being or a demigod. This is a very nice explanation of how the spiritual being, the part and parcel of Krishna, God, accepts a material body by virtue of his own desires. Accepting 2 hands, 2 legs, and so on, the living entity fully enjoys the modes of material nature. Lord Krishna says, Ichhadvesha Samutthena, Oceana Bharat Arjun, a conqueror of all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. So this is how our mind works. We desire something, we keep on desiring, and then after we get it, we hate it because then we not want something else. More desire, more desire, more desire, more something, 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 and then we keep on hating, hating, hating. Hating means, either we hate or we get bored of it and then we don't want it anymore. And we want something new. Originally, the living entity is a spiritual being, but when he actually desires to enjoy the material world, he comes down. From this verse, we can understand that the living entity first accepts a body that is human in form, but gradually, due to his degraded activities, he falls into lower forms of life, into the animal, plant, and aquatic forms. By the gradual process of evolution, the living entity again attains the body of a human being and is given another chance to get out of the process of transmigration. If he again misses his chance in the human form to understand his position, he is again placed in the cycle of birth and death in various types of bodies. So this cycle goes on perpetually. Since time immemorial, we've been in this cycle. Birth, old age, disease, death, birth, old age, disease, death. Different bodies, different species, different families, different countries, different planets. And it's going on and on and on. The desire of the living entity to come into the material world is not very difficult to understand. Although one may be born in a family of Aryans where there are restrictions against meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex, still one may want to enjoy these forbidden things. There is always someone who wants to go to a prostitute for illicit sex or to a hotel to eat meat and drink wine. There is always someone who wants to gamble at nightclubs or enjoy so-called sports. All these propensities are already within the hearts of all of the living entities, but some living entities stop to enjoy these abominable activities and consequently fall down to a degraded platform. The more one desires a degraded life within his heart, the more he falls down to occupy different forms of abominable existence. This is the process of transmigration and evolution. See, the independence is there and the different desires are there in our heart. And when the desires are strong, we might think of fulfilling those desires. And when we start fulfilling those desires, we think, oh, I'll just do it once and then I'll back off. But the tendency of mind is to go down, always to go down to the baser desires or to fulfill those baser instincts. It's not that mind automatically wants to go and serve Krishna. No. Mind always wants to go down, down, down. By our spiritual practices, Peri Bhakti, Bhajan, Sadhan, we have to keep the mind up, the intelligence up. Just like, if we want to fly, it takes lots of energy. An airplane fuel has to be there, and the airplane has to be perfect. All the machinery has to work properly for us to fly. And to keep up in the air, the airplane, it takes lots of fuel. But for airplane to come down, it doesn't take a whole lot. So similarly, to keep our mind, our senses up, we have to give it the fuel of sadhana bhakti, the chanting and the practices and the association and the reading. Otherwise, mind always has a tendency to go down. Always. A particular type of animal may have a strong tendency to enjoy one kind of sense enjoyment, but in the human form, one can enjoy all the senses. The human form has the facility to utilize all the senses for gratification. Unless one is properly trained, he becomes a victim of the modes of material nature. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. As soon as one desires to enjoy his senses, he puts himself under the control of material energy and automatically or mechanically is placed into the cycle of birth and death in various life forms. So this is how a living entity works. We are so much under the influence of the three modes of material nature. We think we are completely independent. No, only thing we can do is desire. And if it is a strong desire, Krishna sanctions it, and three modes of material nature take over, and then we do activities in those modes. So bhakti, by bhakti process, or by yoga process, we try to stay above the three modes. The consciousness, the thought process, the activities, we try to keep them above the three modes. And that is why prasadam, food intake, is very, very important. It has to be prasad. So all these practices and all these instructions that Prabhupada gave us, basically they are there to keep us above the three modes, or at least keep us in the mode of goodness. It's very easy to get down into the mode of ignorance and passion. Very easy. We won't even realize it. When did we get down there? But we have to do our sadhana bhakti properly for that. To stay away, to stay up. Buddhim tu pramadam vidyan mamaham iti yat kritam yamadisthaya dehe asmin puman bhunkte akshubhir gunan. The great sage Narad continued, the word pramad mentioned in this regard refers to material intelligence or ignorance. It is to be understood as such. When one takes shelter of this kind of intelligence, he identifies himself with the material body. Influenced by the material consciousness of I and mine, he begins to enjoy and suffer through his senses. Thus, the living entity is entrapped. So he becomes entrapped. He becomes trapped in this cage of the body, thinking of I and mine. I am this body. That's it. In material existence, so-called intelligence is actually ignorance. When intelligence is cleared up, it is called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, when intelligence is dovetailed with the desires of Krishna, it's called Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. If a Krishna says, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So that is Buddhi Yoga. Real intelligence means linking with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When this is done, the Supreme Personality of Godhead from within gives one the real intelligence by which one may or one can return home back to Godhead. Intelligence in the material world is described in this verse as pramad because in material existence, the living entity falsely claims things to be his. So pramad actually means madness. So in this material world, we falsely claim things as they are mine. He thinks I'm the monarch of all I survey. This is ignorance. Actually, nothing belongs to him. So this should be our mantra. Nothing belongs to me. Nothing. Not even this body. This is what Prabhupada says. Even the body and the senses do not belong to him, for they are given to him by the grace of the Lord to satisfy his different propensities through the material energy. So based on our karmas, based on our desires, these senses are given to us by Krishna. Our parents might just be an instrument in helping us get this body. Even they didn't know how the body is shaped and how it is formed inside the womb. They don't know. But they are just instrumental. That's all. Rest, everything is supplied by Krishna. Not just the ingredients, how the body is going to develop. Which form, which shape, what color, what size, everything decided by Krishna or Krishna's energy, nature. And there are so many constraints or limits on this body that we have. Or there's so many boundaries. Like, I mean, if we look at a human body, human mother and human father, they interact and they produce a human baby. A baby, we all have same kind of hands, and it's not that the hands are going to grow over here and the eyes are going to grow on the knees or the legs are going to grow out of my stomach. No, these limits, these constraints are designed by Krishna, by the nature. And it's not like my shoulders are going to grow like this or there. No, it has a particular shape. It stays with it. Although it's all made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, but again, within the shape, it remains within the shape. It's not going to just grow haphazardly. That's his creation. But even that, nothing belongs with this body, this senses, life force within the body doesn't belong to me. Means I have no control over it. But he becomes mad after everything, claiming this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Janasya moho ayam aham mameti. This is called illusion. Nothing belongs to the living entity, but he claims that everything belongs to him. This is a whole point of fight in the material world. In the family, when we were little, two siblings, they keep on fighting. This This pen belongs to me, or this copy belongs to me, or this bed belongs to me, and this room belongs to me. And then when we grow older, this house belongs to me, and the other person says, this house belongs to me, or this car is mine, that car is mine. And then we keep on fighting. In the office, we keep on fighting. This cubicle is mine, and that computer is mine, and the pen is mine, or the position is mine, or this office is mine. And then we keep on fighting. This project is mine, and this money belongs to me, and the fight goes on. Community, or this is my community, that is your community, my community is better than your community, so we are going to fight. This city is mine, that city is yours, this country is mine, that country is yours. This is madness. Complete madness. And then the wars break up and break out, and then so many people die. Soldiers die. Soldiers are fighting with other soldiers. Personally, they have no fight, no enmity, no nothing against each other. But I'm representing India, and I'm representing Pakistan, and I'm representing China, and we're just going to fight, kill each other, and in the end, of course, Bhagavad Gita says those soldiers who lay down their lives in the battlefield, they go to heaven. So, okay, I might go to heaven, but I leave my family members here to suffer or to enjoy or whatever they do. And if I don't die, and if I get captured, or my leg is blown off or hand is cut, then I live my whole life without the leg or the hand, thinking, oh, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. That is why Prabhupada again and again said, this knowledge is the most important knowledge that has to be given to people in the world. The only thing lacking in this whole world is Krishna consciousness. And this is what we have to help him in distributing. So when the mirror of intelligence is polished, the real activities of the living entity begins. This means that when the person comes to the platform of Krishna consciousness, his real intelligence acts. At that time, he knows that everything belongs to Krishna and nothing belongs to him. As long as one thinks that everything belongs to him, he is in the material consciousness. And when he knows perfectly that everything belongs to Krishna, he is in Krishna consciousness. So that's all. We have to change our consciousness, our intelligence. Consciousness is changed. Intelligence, mind, activities, thought, form, everything will change. Everything. And when we understand, when we realize everything belongs to Krishna, then we won't try to abuse anything, we won't try to misuse anything, we won't try to exploit anything or anyone. Everything belongs to Krishna. We won't try to cheat anybody. Everything belongs to Krishna. Text 6. Sakhai Indriya Gana Jnanam Karma Chayat Kritam Sakhyastad Avritya Prana Pancha Vrithir Yathoragaha. The 5 working senses and the 5 senses that acquire knowledge are all male friends of Puranjani. The living entity is assisted by these senses in acquiring knowledge and engaging in activity. The engagements of the senses are known as girlfriends, and the serpent, which is described as having 5 heads, is a life air acting within the 5 circulatory processes. So this all we studied in the previous chapters. When Puranjan saw that beautiful girl in the forest, and She had so many girlfriends, and then there was a serpent behind her, and so many things they were described very nicely. But this the real purport is given here. Because of his desire to enjoy the material world, the living entity is dressed with the material growth in subtle bodies. Thus, he is given a chance to enjoy the senses. The senses are therefore the instruments for enjoying the material world. Consequently, the senses have been described as friends, sometimes because of too much sinful activity. The living entity does not get a material gross body but hovers on the subtle platform. This is called ghostly life. Because of his not possessing a gross body, he creates a great deal of trouble in this subtle body. Thus, the presence of a ghost is horrible for those who are living in the gross body. Okay, again, Prabhupada talks about the ghosts. But this is what happens when, because of too much sinful activity, the living entity does not get a material gross body because he's not qualified for that yet. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body. Now can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature? But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So the knowledge is important, and this knowledge, the transcendental knowledge, only one can get through all these Vedic scriptures. The living entities are merged into the air of life, which acts in different ways for circulation. There is prana, pan, udan, vyan, and saman. And because the life air functions in this fivefold ways, it is compared to the five-hooded serpent. The soul passes through the Kundalini chakra like a serpent crawling on the ground. The life air is compared to Urag, the serpent. Panchavritti is a desire to satisfy the senses, attached by five sense objects, namely form, taste, sound, smell, and touch. So different associates of that lady, Puranjani, Prabhupada is describing, or Narad Muni is describing, Prabhupada is commenting upon. Brihad balam mano vidya dobhyendriya nayakam panchala panjavishya yanmadhye navakam puram. The 11th attendant, who is the commander of the others, is known as the mind. He is the leader of the senses, both in the acquisition of knowledge and in the performance of work. The Panchal kingdom is that atmosphere in which the five sense objects are enjoyed. Within that Panchal kingdom is the city of the body, which has 9 gates. The mind is the center of all activities and is described here as Brihad Bal, very powerful. To get out of the clutches of Maya, material existence, one has to control his mind. According to training, the mind is the friend and the enemy of the living entity. If one gets a good manager, his estate is very nicely managed. But if the manager is a thief, his estate is spoiled. Similarly, in his material conditional existence, the living entity gives power of attorney to his mind. In material conditional existence, living entity gives power of attorney to his mind. Means, as such, he is liable to be misdirected by his mind into enjoying sense objects. So he gives power of attorney, the soul, that you decide on my behalf. Whatever is best you think, we'll do it. So mind, what is that? It's going to again go to the baser activities. Srila Amrish Maharaj therefore first engaged his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. Savvai Manaha Krishna Padaravindayo. When the mind is engaged in meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord, the senses are controlled. This system of control is called yam, and this means subduing the senses. One who can subdue the senses is called Goswami, but one who cannot control the mind is called Godas. So Go means the senses. The mind directs the activities of the senses which are expressed through different outlets as described in the next verse. So mind, Brihad Bal, very powerful, and that takes over. Actually, intelligence should control the mind, but the mind is very, very powerful. And if the intelligence is not strong enough, it's not spiritual, it cannot control the mind. Akshani nasike karno mukham sheshnu gudaviti dve dvaro bahiriyati yastadindriya samyataha. The eyes, nostrils, and ears are pairs of gates situated in one place. The mouth, genital, and rectum are also different gates. Being placed into a body having these 9 gates, the living entity acts externally in the material world and enjoys sense objects like form and taste. Not being aware of a spiritual position, the living entity, directed by the mind, goes out through the 9 gates to enjoy material objects. Because of long association with material objects, he forgets his real spiritual activities and is thus misled. The entire world is going on being misled by so-called leaders like scientists and philosophers who have no knowledge of the spirit soul. Thus the conditioned soul becomes more and more entangled. So working through these 9 gates, and just to gratify the senses controlled by the mind, the whole world is going on like that, is being misled. And we think this is the goal of life. Eat, drink, and enjoy. Be merry. That's it. So the conditioned soul becomes more and more entangled. And they don't even know that they're doing something wrong. That's a bigger problem. They think this is a perfect way of living. This is what the purpose of life is. They say if you don't drink, if you don't eat meat, if you don't smoke, if you don't go out with girls, then you don't even live. So what's the point in living? You might as well die. That's their thought process. Akshini nasike asyam iti panchpura krita dakshina dakshina karna uttara cha uttara smritaha pashchime iti adhodvaro gudha shishbhi shishnubhir uchyate. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and a mouth, altogether 5, are situated in the front. The right ear is accepted as a southern gate, and the left ear is a northern gate. If we look with the eyes towards east, then the right ear is facing the south, and north ear is facing the north, and the left ear is facing the north. The 2 holes or gates situated in the west are known as the rectum and the genital. Of all sides, the eastern is considered more important, primarily because the sun rises from that direction. The gates on the eastern side, the eyes, nose, and mouth, are thus very important gates in the body. Khadyotavir mukhi chatra netre ekatre nirmite rupam vibrajitam tabhyam vichaste chakshusheshwaraha. The 2 gates named Khadyota and Avirmukhi, which have been spoken of, are the 2 eyes side by side in one place. The term named Vibhrajit should be understood as form. In this way, the 2 eyes are always engaged in seeing different kinds of forms. The 2 eyes are attracted by brilliant things like light. Sometimes we find that little insects are attracted by the brightness of fire and thus enter into it. Similarly, the 2 eyes of the living entity are attracted by the bright and beautiful forms. They entangled in these forms, exactly as the insect becomes attracted to fire. So the insects, when they become attracted to fire, ultimately they enter the fire and they burn down and they die. So similarly, the two eyes, they are always looking for something beautiful, something bright, something nice, and then they get entangled. If you want to look at something beautiful, look at these paintings of Krishna, look at the deities, forms of Krishna. Look at the dham of Krishna. The real beauty lies there. Nalini nalini nase gandha saurabhuchyate grano avadhuto mukhyasya viprano vagra savidrasaha. The two doors named Nalini and Nalini should be known as the two nostrils, and the city named Saurabh represents aroma. The companion spoken of as Avadhuta is a sense of smell. The door called Mukhya is a mouth, and the Vipana is a faculty of speech. Rasagya is a sense of taste. The word Avadhuta means most free. A person is not under the rules and regulations of any injunctions when he has attained the stage of Avadhuta. In other words, he can act as he likes. The Avadhuta stage is exactly like air, which does not care for any obstruction. The mind is restless, turbulent, and obstinate, and very strong. Krishna, and to subdue it, it seems to be more difficult than controlling the mind. Just as the air or wind cannot be checked by anyone, the two nostrils situated in one place enjoy the sense of smell without impediment. When the tongue is present, the mouth continually tastes like all kinds of relishable foodstuffs. Even on the fasting day like Ekadashi, we cannot give up eating, and especially eating something nice. This is how our Ekadashi goes. But these are the different senses and the names used by Narad Muni earlier, described here. Apano vyavaharo atra chitram mandho bahudanam pitrihur dakshina karna utro devhu smritaha. The city called Apan represents engagement of the tongue in speech, and Bahudan is a variety of foodstuffs. The right ear is called the gate of Pitrihu, and the left ear is called the gate of Devahu. Pravritam cha nivritam cha shastram panchala sangitam pitriyanam devayanam shrotra chudhrad vrajet. Narad Muni continued, the city spoken of as Dakshin Panchal represents the scriptures meant for directing pravritti, the process of sense enjoyment and fruitive activities. The other city named Uttar Panchal represents the scriptures meant for decreasing fruitive activities and increasing knowledge. The living entity receives different kinds of knowledge by means of 2 ears, and some living entities are promoted to Pitriloka and some to Devaloka. All this is made possible by the 2 ears. The Vedas are known as Shruti, and the knowledge received from them through oral reception is called Shrutadhara. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one can be promoted to the planets of demigods or to the planets of Pitas, forefathers, or even to the Vaikuntha planet simply through the process of hearing. These things have already been explained in the previous chapters. So in the other the chapter, I think 25th chapter, when this was described, I said something I didn't understand about the right ear and the left ear. Here it is said the right ear is meant for sense enjoyment, hearing for sense enjoyment and fruitive activities, and left ear for decreasing fruitive activities and increasing knowledge. But when we get Gayatri mantra through our spiritual
पापा से पूछ लो किसी काम में क्या दिक्कत है, तुरंत बता देंगे दिक्कत
Haribol,
हो सकता है।
Shashi Bhushan Prabhu. So when we get Gayatri Mantra initiation, or Brahman initiation, we get the Gayatri Mantra in our right ear. And also when we get the Brahman thread, so whenever we have to go and evacuate as stool or urine, we wrap the thread on the right ear. So I asked this question. Here it looks like right ear represents something else, and the Gayatri Mantra something else. What is the difference? So I was told that both are two different things. I mean, this is one is for rituals and one is what it represents. So right ear is important for this Gayatri, because it is said in the right ear, when we wrap that thread on the right ear while passing stool or urine, the thread remains pure because right ear contains all this Vedic knowledge, and Ganges also remains there in the right ear. So there's so much to learn actually. So many things are there. Asuri Medrimar Vagadvar Vaivayo Graminam Ratihi Upasto Durmadha Prokto Nirritir Gud Uchyate. The city called Gramak, which is approached through the lower gate of Asuri, the genital, is meant for sex, which is very pleasing to common men who are simply fools and rascals. The faculty of procreation is called Durmad, and the rectum is called Nirriti. When the world becomes degraded, civilization becomes demoniac, and for the common man, the rectum and the genital are taken very seriously as the centers of all activity. Even such a sacred place as Vrindavan, India, unintelligent men pass off this rectal and genital business as spiritual activity. Such people are called Sahajya. According to their philosophy, through sexual indulgence, one can elevate oneself to the spiritual platform. From these verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, however, we understand that the desires for sexual satisfaction are meant for the Arvak, the lowest among men. To rectify these rascals and fools is very difficult. After all, the sex desires of the common men are condemned in these verses. The word Durmad means wrongly directed, and Niriti means sinful activity. Although this clearly indicates that sex indulgence is abominable and misdirected, even from the ordinary point of view, the Sahajyas nonetheless pass themselves off as devotees conducting spiritual activities. For this reason, Vrindavan is no longer visited by intelligent men. Sometimes we are often asked why we have made our center in Vrindavan. From the external point of view, it can be concluded that Vrindavan has become degenerate due to these Sahajyas activities. Yet, from the spiritual point of view, Vrindavan is the only place where all these sinful persons can be rectified by means of taking birth in the form of dogs, hogs, and monkeys. By living in Vrindavan as a dog, hog, or monkey, the living entity can be elevated to the spiritual platform in the next life. See, Prabhupada speaks so strongly against these indulgences and these activities because we cannot make spiritual progress as long as we are indulging in these activities. The mind will still try to go down. That's the job of the mind. And especially when somebody is trying hard to make progress, Maya will also test. Mind will be obstinate and restless. And there's so many desires from all these past lifetimes in the heart. They also start coming up more and more in front of him. So while fighting with all this, and while fighting with with other thought processes. One who still continues to chant, take shelter, and does spiritual activities, tries to elevate himself. That's a sadhana bhakta. That's a person who's really doing sadhana bhakti. So we have to continue with our sadhana bhakti properly, very seriously, and especially these fasting days, Ekadashi days, and other appearance, disappearance days. So if we observe that properly, Prabhupada guarantees us that you will go back home, back to Godhead. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any question or comment? Okay, so you all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare